I'm gonna give just about one more minute, and then we will get started. Thank you. So hello, I want to welcome you to the third webinar in our series on AI, animals, and ethics, co-sponsored by the Union of International Lawyers, or UIA, and the GW Animal Law Program. I am Professor Joan Schaffner. I'm the faculty co-director of the GW Animal Legal Education Initiative. And today we have two wonderful speakers who will be discussing a variety of issues related to AI, animals, and ethics. Yolanda Eisenstein will present on generative AI's impact on animals and the work of the animal protection community. And Diego Plaza will present on AI and animals, ethical challenges and opportunities. Each speaker will present for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for questions. I would like to ask that you post your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to all of those that we can. I also want to mention that this session is being recorded and will be available on the GW Animal Law YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get started. I want to introduce each of our speakers and then hand it over to them. Yolanda Eisenstein is an animal lawyer and president of the Animal Law Commission of the Union of International Lawyers. She's a board member of Lawyers for Animal Protection in Africa, where she works on international wildlife issues. Yolanda is currently writing the second edition of Careers in Animal Law to be published by the American Bar Association later this year. Diego Plaza is a Chilean lawyer specializing in animal law, holding an animal law LLM from Lewis and Clark Law School. He is the founder of the Center for Animal Law Studies of Chile, or CIDA Chile, and the Interspecies Justice Foundation, dedicated to advancing animal rights through the development and promotion of animal law and activism. He has authored books, coordinated collective works, and served as the director and one of the professors of the Chilean animal law course at CIDA Chile. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Yolanda.
Thank you, Joan. I'm going to share my screen and my slide presentation. Okay, am I good?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay.
Looks great. Thank you.
Great. So welcome, everyone. We have a good crowd today. I appreciate that. And I assume everybody's head spinning over AI. And you know, there's a lot in play right now. There's AI is impacting animals and humans, and it doesn't seem like anybody is at the wheel right now. So what I'm going to talk about today is to give you some things to think about. AI is impacting animals in a number of ways, and I think it's time, certainly for those of us in the animal protection movement and lawyers, to be front and center in the issue. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on what AI is, but I did think it might be interesting just to recap the progression of AI and its development. So AI has been around since the 1950s, and then in 2022, generative AI was introduced by OpenAI, and that sort of changed the ball game. That was certainly beyond anything that we had seen before. The difference being generative, meaning AI can understand human language, it can create language, it can create text, images. So generative AI is what changed everything and set us on the path that we're on now. Artificial general intelligence is sort of, some people think we have it, some people don't think we have it. And that is AI intelligence that either matches or exceeds human intelligence. And so that's why it's controversial. Sam Altman with OpenAI says that he's confident that his company knows how to build AGI. So this is kind of an issue that's in the wings. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. One of the things that is happening right now that's of interest is some of the greatest thinkers in the world are putting together a test. And so they are going to test AI to actually see if it is smarter than humans. So stay tuned for that. Finally, there is something called sentient AI. It doesn't exist now because it would mean that AI actually feels and has emotions. But some researchers are sort of ahead of the game and are interested in how people feel about that. And I was just going to give you one of the statistics. Um, they were doing a research project and they asked people how they felt about sentient AI, and 71% of the respondents believe that sentient AI should be treated with respect. So if your head is spinning, that's why, because we have a whole new world out there on artificial intelligence. So as a philosopher, I had to bring up Rene Descartes as sort of an aside. We all know, those of us who are animal advocates, that Descartes thought that animals were just machines. And so I thought it was interesting to think about the 17th century versus the century today. And, maybe we've come full circle. I was wondering how Descartes would feel about human intelligence. He verified his own humanness by saying, I think, therefore I am. And he thought that animal bodies are machines that operate according to the disposition and motion of their parts. And so, what would he think if he knew about robotic animals? So, I bring that up just as a point of reference in terms of history and thinking about how we go forward. So AI is obviously a tool. We all know that. But I also think it's different from, other technologies. And I'm going to borrow a statement from Aaron Kahana, who's a lawyer and professor at the University of Minnesota. He's been involved in technology for many years. And I was listening to a presentation that he made, and he made a comment that I thought was really um, important and accurate, that AI has had a destabilizing effect that's unique to AI, that no other technology has put us in this situation. And I think it's a very good descriptor. And it's because of AI's capabilities. We can actually talk to it. If you have used Chat GPT, sometimes I'm taken aback by what it says to me because it's so human-like sometimes. And I think that that's certainly something that technology has never done before. So I think that destabilizing is probably a good way. The ground is sort of shifting. We're not really sure what to do. So I think that's a good way to think about artificial intelligence. And on another destabilizing note, I don't know if any of you heard this or read this, but Microsoft announced last week that it has created a new state of matter. It's not liquid, it's not a gas, and it's not a solid. And so this is in their quest to make a powerful machine called a quantum computer. So this is just one more step that makes us think the ground is shifting a little bit. Okay, so let's get down to the crux of my presentation and why you're here. AI changes how we see animals. It's changing our human-animal relations. And I've given a few examples, and Diego is going to get into this a little bit more, but there are systems, artificial intelligence systems, that eliminate all contact with animals, and the human caregiver is replaced by a machine. And one example is drones that walk dogs. So think about that. I mean, one of my joys in life is walking my dogs. So if we're not walking our dogs, and if robots are maybe feeding our dogs, maybe they're throwing balls for our dog and playing with our dogs, that obviously changes our relationship with our dogs. Bionic companion robot pets. There are several websites. All you have to do is Google this. And their claim is that the robot pet addresses all of the human needs in having a pet for emotional companionship, comfort. That obviously changes our relationship. The robotic animals in zoos, there are some tests that some zoos are conducting right now to replace some of the wildlife with robots. What does that say about zoos? Does it say that we still advocate for zoos, or zoos are okay as long as there are robots there? So once again, it changes our relationship with animals and how we see animals. And then finally, one of the huge and important projects that's going on is the decoding of animal communications, whales, monkeys, birds. Um, but if you think about it, if I can understand a whale, if I can talk to a whale, does that change my relationship with it? Of course it does. So these are some things that I think as animal advocates, we need to be thinking about. Animal protection is at the heart of what we do. And AI has destabilized that. So I think that we have to be more involved, and maybe your organization is more involved. And if it is, that's great. But I think to a certain extent, some of the things I'm seeing is we've been a little bit slow to come to the table with developers and researchers. So that's part of what I'm saying, is that we need to step up a little bit. Why? Because there are legal and ethical issues. I mean, think about the emotional support pets. Would we represent them? Can you not damage them? What is the ethics of the robot versus the real? One of the things I was thinking about is, are robotic pets our gateway to push legislatures, Congress, and judges to make the distinction between an animal that's a living sentient being that's now considered property, and a robot, which is property? It's an inanimate object. So I think these are things we need to think about, that we need to be talking about. Um, Alienation. Dogs, they crave human companionship. That's what we've bred them for. So is it fair? Is it ethical for us to have robots that feed them and take care of them, or drones that walk them? And these are real technologies. I'm not talking about something that's in the future. This is actually happening right now. So these are questions that animal lawyers and advocates need to be thinking about and discussing. Um, AI biases. We know there are human biases, but there are animal biases as well. We need to be addressing that. We need to know what those biases are. Autonomy. A lot of the research is maybe not invasive, but is certainly intrusive on wildlife. At what point do we get to the point that we're depriving them of their autonomy? These are questions that we need to be answering. And for those of you who are lawyers, I hope you're using AI. There's certainly lots of reasons to use it, but there are also ethical considerations. Competence. How well do you know AI? Diligence. Do the lawful ethical measures include AI that you're using? What means are you using to accomplish your legal objective? How are you communicating with your client? Confidentiality. What have you revealed to artificial intelligence? Anything you feed into Chat GPT becomes part of its database of knowledge. So if you're a lawyer, you need to be thinking about these. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there are certainly all types of ethics that are involved in our use of AI, or our lack of knowledge of AI. So this is sort of a shout out to all of the lawyers to think about this. So AI's impact on the animal protection community. I think it's huge. And I hope that your organization is in front of that. I haven't seen a lot of that. I've been looking at websites. I've been going to conferences and signing up for newsletters and basically trying to get involved in more AI. And I'm not seeing a lot of my colleagues. So in a certain sense, I'm not really sure how much the animal protection community is involved, but I think that we could certainly do more. Um, I think that business as usual or a wait and see attitude is out of the question. We need to know how AI is helping animals, how AI is hurting animals, and situations where we really don't know. I think that organizations need to be looking at their staffing. I mean, can you put more people in the field and less in administrative work from a staffing standpoint? What is your donor strategy? Your donors are going to be asking about AI if they're not already. Um, my suggestion is to get out in front of that and tell them what your AI strategy is. Looking at litigation and legislative issues, my sense and what I've seen is there are agricultural states that are already passing legislation that shields factory farms from any sort of consequences of their use of AI. We need to be looking at that. Should we be suing these states? So I think this is another area that we really need to be out in front of it. Public policy. Who's going to set policy? The government can't even decide what they need to do in terms of policy with humans. They're not looking at animals or developers. No, it's got to be the animal advocates. It's got to be the animal protection community that does this. And AI is only going to get more complicated. If we're not looking at it, if you don't understand it, if you're not interested in it now, it's just going to be more difficult as we go forward. Okay, understanding and embracing AI. So, how do we do this? First of all, I think it's important that we think globally. It's no longer the US and the rest of the world. And I think a good example of that just happened recently. The Humane Society is no longer the Humane Society of the US and Humane Society International. They are Humane World for Animals. I think this is an excellent example of thinking globally and realizing that we're in a global world when it comes to animal protection and certainly with artificial intelligence. We have to become interdisciplinary. We have to broaden our perspectives. We have to work with other disciplines, not only in the law, but in science and technology. So I'm going to give an example of my organization, Lawyers for Animal Protection in Africa. These are some of the things that we've done to embrace AI and to get in front of it. One of the things we're working on is illegal wildlife trafficking and human wildlife conflicts. These are two of the most important issues in wildlife law today and wildlife conservation. And we have collaborated with some artificial intelligence experts and developers and have a system called Alaris that law enforcement and conservationists and policy people are using to share information, which is a big problem. Nobody's talking to each other in these areas, and to give them a system that's not outdated, that's easy to use. So Alaris is one of the examples of collaboration with AI experts. We're incorporating science and technology into our messaging. We have 3 grant proposals out that are collaborative. They're not legal grants, they're technology grants. So if we get these grants, we're going to be able to do more Alaris type of work. We're going to conferences and meetings that are outside of our comfort zone. I'm going to the conference in March and the AI and Animals conference. We have expanded our board to include a data scientist. So these are some of the things that we're doing to embrace AI and learn how to use it, because in some situations, the law is not going to help us. We're going to have to use technology. Okay, So these are just a few examples of things that I'm doing that I think are important and interesting in terms of expanding your horizons. I want to give a huge shout out to George Washington University. When Jamie McLaughlin and I approached them a year ago to do an AI and animals webinar, they said yes without hesitation. They didn't say, oh, maybe we should wait and see what happens. They were on it, and we've had very successful webinars, and we're actually planning a conference. So I think that's a great example. Stay tuned for our next webinar. Interspecies Internet is another group that I've been following. They do a monthly talk, which I found them to be very interesting. They have a reading club. They're doing some interesting work. AI Animal Digest. This is something that I'm starting. I've been following AI for a while, and I felt that there needs to be a place you can go and get sound bites to just get little pieces of information because everything's changing so quickly. Newsletters take too long. They seem to be farmed animal or wildlife. So this is something I'm starting next month. I'm going to do a monthly digest that just has little blurbs with a link. If you want to know more about it, I'm going to cover everything from legislation related to AI to science. And if you're interested in signing up, it's going to be free. Just send me an email to aianimal@eglobal.ai. The conference in March, you can go online. You don't have to go to Berkeley. I think this is going to be excellent. And then finally, Kyle Barron, who is actually in Australia, has been doing a lot of work with not-for-profits in terms of AI, and he has an ebook that you might want to download. So these are just a few things that I'm doing to sort of get up to speed on what's happening. I read technical, I read, the MIT technology. So I'll be sharing that with anyone who wants to sign up for my newsletter. And I promise it's going to be a 5 to 10 minute read. Okay, and so my parting shot is to stay connected to the natural world. I love technology. It doesn't talk back. You don't have to feed it. Doesn't get its feelings hurt. It's wonderful. But you can't not stay connected to nature. I think it's very important. I'll quote one of my comments from one of my colleagues, Bryce Bartuli. He said he was detoxing from technology. And I thought, that's a great example. I mean, he's a data scientist. He lives and breathes technology, but even he has to back off from it. So my advice to you is to stay connected to the natural world. Go to a park, walk your dog, because it's very important. So with that, I will turn it over to Joan. Thank you.
That was great, Yolanda. Thank you so much. You really raised a number of issues and questions that we all need to be thinking about, right, and preparing for, and hopefully doing that sooner rather than later, as AI is just transforming everything. I have to admit, yeah, I don't think I want to. Well, I guess I'd love to have a robot that could come in and clean my house with all of my many cats here, but I don't. I still want to be caring for my cats and feeding them and don't want to have a robot doing those sorts of things. And I don't think having a robot cat is the same thing as having a live cat. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that takes off. Thanks so much. All right. So Diego, let's turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you, Yolanda, for that awesome presentation. So I'm going to share my presentation. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, it's
I
good.
think so, right? Okay.
Do you want to put it under the slideshow, or I don't know if you want to do that, or just leave it as is. It's either way, but we can see it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying, but this is a little bit slow.
That's okay.
Let's wait for a few seconds. Still thinking, I think. Okay. So, well,
Perfect, thank you.
thank you for the opportunity to participate in today's webinar. My name is Diego Plaza, and I will be exploring how AI impacts animals, both in ways that can benefit them and in ways that may work against their interests. So this topic is deeply grounded in ethics. It raises questions about how technology is designed and implemented and whether it truly serves the well-being of animals or simply advances human-centered objectives. But before diving into the specifics of AI impact on animals, it's helpful to outline the broader picture, right? On one hand, AI has proven to be a powerful tool for improving animal welfare, protecting wildlife and reducing reliance on animal. It has also strengthened movements like veganism, animal rights activism, and animal law itself. But AI is not inherently ethical. Its applications can also reinforce harmful systems from industrial animal farming to genetic manipulation and increased experimentation. So this roadmap you're seeing right now will guide us through both the benefits and ethical risks, setting the stage for a deeper reflection on the Q&A section. So let's go first with the benefits of AI regarding animals. So AI is being used for monitoring animal welfare. And in this regard, a growing field known as precision livestock farming is one example of how AI can support animal welfare, according to some voices. So these systems use sensors, cameras, and algorithms to monitor the health and well-being of farm animals in real time. For example, pig farming. In pig farming, AI-powered tools analyze specific behaviors such as postures associated with pain or signs of illness like coughing. Environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, and the presence of harmful gases are also tracked to ensure conditions are optimal. In the same way, in Chile, in my country, automated systems have been developed to monitor the feeding patterns of dairy cows. These systems create personalized feeding plans to meet the nutritional needs of each individual animal, improving both their welfare and productivity. Additionally, radio frequency identification tags have been integrated with AI to monitor individual animals' movement and behavior within a herd. These systems can track everything from rest and activity cycles to deviations from normal behavior, which can indicate stress or illness. So, from an ethical standpoint, these innovations show promise. They do, since they can reduce unnecessary suffering and ensure animals receive appropriate care. However, it's important to remain cautious. These tools are often deployed with a primary focus on productivity and profit, rather than the intrinsic value or well-being of animals. So this raises ethical concerns about whether welfare improvements are incidental to economic goals or not. But a different interesting use of AI regarding animals is the use of AI for protecting wildlife. So AI has also proven valuable in protecting wildlife and preserving ecosystems. One of the most exciting developments in this regard is the use of non-invasive monitoring technologies. For instance, AI-powered microphones and algorithms have been used by organizations like Rainforest Connection to detect illegal logging in real time. So by analyzing sounds, such as, for example, chainsaws or vehicles in protected areas, these systems alert authorities before irreparable damage is done. Another interesting example is the Elephant Listening Project, which used AI to analyze the vocalizations of elephants, which helps conservationists track their movements, predict migration patterns and identify threats such as poaching. So these technologies not only prevent harm, but also promote coexistence by offering actionable insights into how we can better share habitats with wild animals. So again, from an ethical standpoint, these applications represent a step forward for sure, because they minimize human interference while providing critical information to safeguard animal populations. But at the same time, we can say that even these advancements are not free from concerns. For example, there is the questions of surveillance, or how do we ensure that monitoring technologies do not cross ethical boundaries or lead to the exploitation of wildlife data for commercial purposes? Is something we have to reflect on. Another interesting perspective is the use of AI in order to reduce the use of animals in research. So AI has also the potential to minimize the reliance on animals in scientific and medical research. And in short, by analyzing biological processes virtually, AI can replace traditional experiments that actually rely on animal testing. For instance, in silico medicine uses AI to simulate biological processes and develop new drugs, reducing the need for live animal testing. In the same way, organ-on-chip technologies enhanced by AI can model complex systems, reducing the need for invasive experimentation. However, from an ethical perspective, this aligns with the principle of reducing harm, sure, but there's also this paradox that we have to consider. AI often requires vast amounts of data to train algorithms. This can, in some cases, increase the demand for animal testing to generate the necessary data sets. And this is especially evident in fields like neuroscience, where large-scale experiments on animals are conducted to create predictive models. And this is something we're going to go deeper in the next few minutes, because it's a really problematic issue. And well, another important use of AI for animals is AI in support of veganism, animal activism, and animal rights, this whole movement. So basically, these applications extend beyond the welfare of individual animals and aim to shift societal norms and values towards a more ethical and sustainable future. For example, regarding veganism, companies like NotCo or Live Green Co. are revolutionizing the food industry with the help of AI. Let's think about NotCo. NotCo used this algorithm called Giuseppe that analyzes the molecular structure of animal-based foods and identifies plant-based ingredients that can replicate their taste, texture, and functionality. And this has led to the development of products like Not Milk or Not Burger, which aim to make plant-based diets more accessible and appealing. In the same way, Live Green Co. uses its AI platform called Taraka to reformulate everyday food products with natural plant-based alternatives, eliminating or suppressing synthetic and animal-derived ingredients. But AI is also being used to make more powerful the animal activism and advocacy efforts. For example, tools like Beck3, an AI chatbot, provide personalized support to activists by generating outreach strategies, drafting campaign materials, and even countering misinformation about plant-based diets and animal rights. In the same way, initiatives like OpenPOS use AI to create databases, chatbots, and automated systems that help animal protection organizations work more efficiently. Additionally, AI models, specifically large language models like Animal Law GPT in Australia and Derecho Animal Chileno GPT in Chile, a tool where we personally work on through CIDA Chile, are actually specializing in animal legislation, making more easy the access to legal knowledge and empowering lawyers and advocates with like an easier access to animal rights frameworks in jurisdictions like Australia, Chile, and beyond. So these tools represent a shift toward empowering individuals and organizations to advocate for systemic change. I think that by amplifying the voices of activists and making plant-based lifestyles more accessible, AI has the potential to not only improve the lives of animals, but also transform how society values them. And this highlights an important ethical consideration. While AI is often seen as a tool for efficiency, its true value lies in its ability to challenge exploitative systems and promote more compassionate world. So these applications demonstrate that technology can align with ethical principles when its purpose is guided by a commitment to justice and sustainability. However, while these applications demonstrate the sort of positive potential of AI, there's also significant risks when AI is used in ways that harm animals. So let us now turn our attention to these concerns, or let's go to the dark side of AI. So let's think again about AI in industrial agriculture. So one of the most ethical troubling applications of AI is its role in intensifying industrial animal farming. For example, AI systems are used to optimize the growth rates of animals like chickens and pigs, often at the expense of their welfare. In tightly confined spaces, algorithms can even calculate the minimum amount of space, food, and time required to maximize productivity. And even more concerning are automated slaughter systems, which prioritize efficiency over the minimization of suffering. So these systems risk reducing animals to mere units of production with little to no consideration for their emotional or social needs. Ethically, this raises serious concerns, as we can expect. While AI can optimize processes, it can also exacerbate existing welfare issues by justifying conditions that are already harmful to animals. It's a stark reminder that technology is not neutral, but it reflects the priorities of those who designed and implement it. Another harmful use of AI in front of animals is the use of AI in fisheries. So basically, similar concerns arise in the fishing industry, since AI-powered sonar and satellite imaging systems have made fishing more efficient by accurately locating fish populations and predicting migratory patterns. While this may seem beneficial from an economic standpoint, the ethical cost is significant, as we can expect. Overfishing is already a major issue, and these technologies risk accelerating the depletion of marine ecosystems. And not only does this harm targeted species, but also disrupts entire food chains and ecosystems. So we must ask whether such efficiency is sustainable or if it prioritizes short-term economic gains over the long-term health of marine environments. And well, in my opinion, perhaps the most ethically complex issue is the use of AI in genetic manipulation. So in short, AI combined with tools like CRISPR allows for the creation of genetically modified animals tailored to specific industrial needs. For example, pigs can be engineered to grow faster or resist disease, while chickens may be modified for higher egg production. let's think about the Aqua Advanced salmon in Canada. They designed this salmon that grow like really fast, and they can just kill these animals in just a few months since they are born. So this is a major issue and can like create different problems, as we will see. So in other words, like while this might seem like progress, the ethical implications are profound. These modifications often result in animals with severe health issues, such as, for example, skeletal deformities or respiratory problems. But moreover, treating animals as customizable products undermine their intrinsic value and raises questions about our responsibility toward them as sentient beings. And there is also the risk of unintended consequences. Why? Because genetically modified animals could potentially escape and breed with wild populations, disrupting ecosystems and biodiversity. And that's why the company that designed the Aqua Advanced salmon recommended to grow this salmon not in the sea or in lakes or rivers, but in inside pools because of the risk of escapes. So this forces us to confront difficult questions. So we should ask ourselves, are we justified in manipulating animals for our benefit? And if so, where should we draw the line? And well, we'll talk a little bit about the paradox of increased animal experimentations to train AI systems. So while AI holds great promise in reducing animal testing, through virtual simulations and predictive modeling, it also presents a paradox. In some cases, the development of AI itself can lead to an increase of animal experimentation. This is especially true in research fields that require massive datasets to train machine learning models. For example, in the study of neurological disorders like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, researchers often rely on animal models to gather data about brain activity and the effects of potential treatments. These datasets are then used to train AI systems capable of identifying patterns and making predictions. So a 2022 study in Nature Neuroscience highlighted how large-scale experiments involving animals were necessary to collect the data needed for advanced AI-driven analysis. Another example can be found in the development of predictive toxicity models for new drugs and chemicals. So while AI tools can simulate how a substance may affect the human body, these models also require extensive training on biological data, much of which is derived from traditional animal testing. In the same regard, a 2021 study published in Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence noted that deep learning algorithms for toxicity prediction relied heavily on animal-based experimental data to ensure accuracy. So this, as we can see, is deeply concerning because AI is often celebrated as a tool to replace or reduce or suppress animal experimentation, but when its development depends on generating large-scale datasets from animals, it risks perpetuating or even increasing their suffering. This creates a moral conflict. While the end goal may be to reduce harm, the path to achieving that goal may involve significant ethical compromises. So to address this issue, researchers must explore alternatives such as, for example, improving data sharing practices, using existing datasets, or investing in more advanced non-animal testing methods like organ-on-chip technologies, among others. So without these efforts, the paradox of AI-driven animal exploitation in animal experimentations will continue. So, to conclude, we can say that artificial intelligence has the potential to improve animal welfare, reduce suffering, and reshape our relationship with not-human animals. However, AI does not possess inherent ethical values. It operates within the frameworks set by those who design it and implement it. So this means that while it can be a tool for compassion and sustainability, it can also reinforce systems that exploit and control animals in new and more complex ways. So as we consider the future of AI and its relationship with animals, we must ask at least 3 key questions. For example, is AI truly reducing harm to animals, or is it simply shifting the burden to new areas? Are we designing AI systems with the intrinsic value of animals in mind, or solely for human benefit? Or how can we ensure that AI technologies align with principles of justice and sustainability? So these questions, among many other interesting questions, become even more pressing as AI not only impacts animals directly, but also begins to change our very definition of what an animal is. The integration of AI into animal care, the emergence of robotic pets, and the interpretation of animal communications through AI are reshaping our understanding of human-animal relationships. So while AI holds remarkable potential to protect and improve the lives of animals, its deployment must be guided by justice, sustainability, and a commitment to ethical responsibility. The challenge ahead is not just about technological process, but about shaping an AI-driven world that fosters respect, coexistence, and a genuine care for all living beings. With these considerations in mind, we must move forward with vigilance and intention, leveraging AI not as a tool for convenience, but as a force for meaningful change in the way we relate and protect the animal world, human and non-human. So, well, thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward for the Q&A section.
Diego, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. And again, we have another series of important questions to consider that you raised for us as well. And we do have several questions in the Q&A. So in the interest of trying to get through as many as possible, I'll sort of shift. I'll sort of move around a little bit just to to see what we can get in. Yolanda, there's several people that are interested. You mentioned in your talk about certain states passing laws that protect Big Ag's use of AI. Can you perhaps talk a little bit more about that, and particularly which states you were referring to, and just a little bit more in depth about that issue?
Sure. First of all, I'll remind everybody that I posed these as questions. My expertise is wildlife. Perhaps Jamie McLaughlin, who's on the webinar, could answer this. My question is, are animal protection agency organizations looking at the ag-gag laws? How does this protect AI processes? And what states are doing in terms of passing AI laws? Is that impacting how corporations are using AI? So I pose those as questions along with my other questions in terms of these are things we need to be looking at.
Got it. So you're not actually aware necessarily of specific states having passed these laws, just that we need to be monitoring them. You mentioned ag-gag laws that, I mean, those have been around for a while, but
right. And the ag-gag laws probably need to be revisited. How does AI, how does precision livestock farming impact that? How does it impact undercover investigations? So I think that AI has introduced a whole new element that we need to be looking at what these states are doing and how the current laws are impacting factory farming.
Got it. All right. So another question says AI does not generate itself, at least so far. So what are the liability issues if it malfunctions or otherwise gets it wrong? I'm not sure if one of you would have any thoughts on that. I know it's a little bit not necessarily animal focused, but any thoughts in that regard, either Yolanda or Diego?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I guess that the legal world is still trying to answer that question. AI does not exist in a vacuum. It's designed and trained and deployed by humans, but when it malfunctions or causes harm, like there's the question that who is responsible, the developer or the user or the company that implemented? So as far as I know, right now, there is no universal legal framework, and that might be a really big problem. So, for example, in factory farming, let's say an AI-powered system designed to detect illness in pig fails, and a disease spread through the herd or to other animals, causing unnecessary suffering. Who is liable? The company using the systems, the engineers who build the algorithm, the manufacturer of the sensors. These systems are often built with layers of AI components and making accountability really difficult to trace. I guess that then there's the issue of bias and error. AI in animal-related industries relies on massive data sets, but those data sets are not always accurate or ethically sourced. There has been like different experiment about the bias on AI. So if an AI system using conservation, for example, misidentified a species and leads to a wrong intervention, for example, say an endangered species is misclassified as an invasive and killed, like who is to blame? I guess it's something like we should discuss about, and it's really important to do like to build bridges from our area, like animal law, to other areas, and partner with AI experts, with scientific, with philosophers, with ethicists, in order to create protocols or agreements that can be shown to legislators in order to regulate these new developments that are being developed more fast than we think right now.
Definitely. I agree with what Diego was saying. And I think, it's still to be determined. There are already lawsuits that are in the queue. And, can our existing legal framework, is there the capacity to handle these suits? So I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens over the next years in terms of AI and how it impacts liability and our existing laws. I mean, if you think about lawmakers having to pass laws that incorporate AI technology, I think it's going to be a challenge. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Thank you. Diego, this is sort of two related questions here. I think several of us were a little concerned because we're thinking, gee, the AI used to get rid of animals used in research sounds like a really great idea, but then you mentioned that actually it could actually make it more problematic because we may need more animals to get the AI. So the related two questions is, could AI simply look at already existing animal testing to develop non-animal methods, or related, are there any AI models for animal research that have been developed that would not require, right, further harm or testing on animals to start using immediately?
Disclaimer, I'm not an expert in science, in the science of experimenting with animals, but I will like talk a little bit about what I know, or I think I know. So in theory, yes, I think that AI could analyze existing animal testing data to develop non-animal methods. In fact, this is already happening to some extent. AI-driven models are being trained on decades worth of animal research data to predict how chemicals, drugs, and diseases affect biological systems. And the idea is that if AI can learn enough from past experiments, it can or it could replace the need for future ones. But here's where this issue gets more complicated, because AI doesn't generate knowledge out of thin air. It needs massive datasets to train on, and unfortunately, a lot of these datasets actually come from animal testing. That means that AI may still depend on animal experimentation to become advanced enough to replace it, at least for a little bit more time. And well, this creates the dilemma that we talk about, like if developing AI-based alternatives require running more experiments on animals to feed the systems with training data, are we really moving toward a solution or just shifting the harm? Or I'm not sure, like, what would Peter Singer say about that? Like, is like the harm is worse that or better, taking into consideration the end that we are pursuing. But I guess that another challenge is the quality of existing animal testing data. Because I think that a significant portion of historical animal research has been criticized for being inconsistent, unreliable, or poorly translated to human biology. So AI might be able to analyze patterns in this data, but if the data itself is flawed, then AI models could end up reproducing those same errors, potentially leading to ineffective or misleading non-animal alternatives. So in conclusion, what I want to say is that there are promising approaches, but it's really like uncertain what will happen in the next few years regarding this specific complex issue.
Thank you. Yeah. Yolanda, this one is a little tangential to your question, to your discussion, but since you talked about wildlife, it says, what are you predicting the impacts of AI will be on wildlife due to AI data centers' high demand for energy, land, and water? Have you sort of thought about the downside of that regard, in that regard?
Well, I think the areas where where wildlife and illegal trafficking is a problem, that's not going to have so much of an impact. I think the data centers are going to have an impact, certainly in the United States and perhaps other places. I think one of the problems with wildlife trafficking and in terms of the information sharing is it gets into the wrong hands. If you have an AI system that's tracking poachers or tracking wildlife, that information gets shared and all of a sudden the poachers know where the wildlife is. So I think that's one of our challenges in terms of using AI, is keeping it in the hands of the people who are trying to prevent it versus the people who are the poachers. So I think that's probably a bigger issue for us.
In terms of, yeah, yours. I was just saying it's just that it's related to wildlife and the environment, but clearly
Yep.
AI has its own issues from an environmental
Right.
perspective that we need
Yeah.
to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another question. I think has anyone studied or run tests on the well-known open access AI systems to see if they show any animal biases? Say, a while ago, I asked ChatGPT if we should grant legal personhood for animals, and it gave a paragraph for and a paragraph against, and concluded it is a political and ethical issue for society, so it didn't take a side. That's for either you, Diego or Yolanda.
Well, I think there have to be some biases in there because there are certain animals that humans are attracted to, pandas, elephants. And so all of this is getting fed into AI. It's getting trained on this. So I think certainly there are biases that exist right now. And how that plays out, I think remains to be seen. But sure.
Yeah.
So
ahead,
yes, I just wanted to say that, for example, I think depends on the model of AI that you are using, because Google has like this model that carry out like really racist outcome and answers. for example, and I'm aware about the biases, but it's really weird because a couple of years ago, I carried out this experiment where I just baked this sort of really long interview to ChatGPT 3.5 about, for example, do you know what an animal is? That was like the first questions, and the last ones were like really philosophical questions about animal rights, about veganism, about climate change. And I was expecting a really like non-vegan or anti-animal rights answers, and I was surprised that it was like sort of more conscious, like I'm not really talking about consciousness, but the answers that gave me were like pretty rational, and it was like kind of, again, aware, flying quotes, about these issues. And it recommended that we should like basically go vegan or fight for animal rights. But it was aware that there was a lot of cultural issues that we should try to solve inside of our societies in order to reach these agreements. So I'm not sure how the bias on animal rights or veganism, for example, it may work. Maybe it was like a sort of more vegan answers because of my previous interactions with ChatGPT, according to my account. Or maybe if you ask the proper questions, you can direct the answers somehow without intending it. So the bias actually exists, but that was like an interesting outcome of this experiment.
Yeah, I'm going to be chatting about a chat I had with ChatGPT this weekend. And it was interesting because I asked ChatGPT for a recipe for cow meat, and it, gave me beef stroganoff. But then I asked for a recipe for cat meat, and it told me that no, you shouldn't be eating cats. It is, cats are our companion animals and blah, 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 right? And it was interesting because obviously, number one, it clearly has sort of a Western bias. But number two, it certainly has some bias with respect to how, based on our own views of different animals, how we should or shouldn't be treating certain animals. And I see that Amy Wilson, I've read this article that Amy put in the chat. It's entitled "Speciesist Bias in AI: How AI Applications Perpetuate Discrimination and Unfair Outcomes Against Animals," and that was published a couple of years ago. So there's definitely some biases, but I think those are some of the issues that we're trying to work with the LLM folks to try to rid them of that. I know that we're out of time. So I want to thank Yolanda, Diego, really fabulous presentations. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions, but it was really a fabulous conversation, and look forward to our next webinar, because we're really excited about talking about AI, animals, ethics, and the law. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Joanne and Yolanda, for that awesome presentation.
Thank you.